Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're taking your sources, and today it's some really powerful stuff from David Goggins' Can't Hurt Me. And we just pull out the key insights for you.
Yeah, and our goal here, our mission, let's say, it's not just, recounting Goggins' life story. It's really about digging into those intense early days, the principles that really forged his mindset.
Right.
Especially how he deals with adversity, like unbelievable adversity, and that relentless self-improvement drive. We're looking at where that extreme mental toughness actually comes from.
Okay, let's dive in then, right at the start. His childhood. I mean, it jumps right out that this was not an easy beginning. It was, unstable and full of real hardship.
Definitely. You can't really get Goggins without understanding that early environment. His father, Ernest Goggins Sr., he's a huge figure there. He actually had some early success,
Yeah.
A Coca-Cola distribution thing, then Skateland, and later the Vermilion Room roller rink in East Buffalo.
And that's where he met Goggins's mother, Jackie, right, at the Vermilion Room. She was super young, 19, he was 36. And Goggins paints his dad as having this, really strong, almost deceptive charm.
Yeah, he mentions Trennis could seem religious, even though he wasn't really, and that appealed to Jackie. Goggins says she was kind of drunk on his charm. It's a stark picture.
It really is, but that charm, it was hiding something much, much darker. Goggins talks about his dad seeing everyone, even customers, just as ways to make money, offering free drinks, but it was all calculated,
Exactly. Calculated to get them to spend more. And that manipulation, it definitely carried over into the home.
Yeah, and tragically, way beyond just money. Goggins details some just awful abuse, physical violence towards his mother, towards the kids. There's that one story where he yells, "Don't hit my mom."
Ugh, yeah.
And gets thrown down, threatened. His mom hits a panic button, police come, but Goggins says they basically just laughed with his dad and left. Didn't even talk to her privately. I mean, what does that teach a kid?
It's brutal. That feeling of absolute helplessness. Goggins said after that, they knew, it was open season, and we were the hunted. He talks about the beatings, too, the sort of protocol in his bedroom.
Right.
The waiting in the dark, the dread before the belt. He says the psychological part, the not knowing when it would end, was almost worse than the physical pain itself.
And that awful night, his mother was beaten, senseless. His brother couldn't watch, but Goggins says he always paid close fucking attention. It's just, wow. But even in that darkness, his mom, she showed this incredible strength, trying to create some normalcy, like enrolling him in Cub Scouts.
Yeah, that Cub Scouts thing, it feels small, but Goggins frames it as this massive act of defiance. A way to carve out something good, something normal, even for just a bit each week. Proof that they mattered, like you said, that they weren't totally powerless. It makes you think how vital those little bits of hope are.
Absolutely. And eventually they did get out. His mom got this tip, almost whispered, about a Volvo dealership in Erie. They stayed in a packed Holiday Inn. The manager made an exception, got the car fixed, and drove all night to his grandparents' place in Brazil, Indiana.
That arrival must have been huge. He calls it the second phase of life, finally escaping the devil himself.
But escaping didn't mean everything was suddenly easy. They still faced huge money problems in Brazil, Indiana. He remembers driving home with basically no gas, fridge empty.
Right, and then finding those mason jars his mom had saved change in. A habit from her dad during the Great Depression, something Trennis had mocked her for.
Yeah, you never know when you might need it. And suddenly they did. It really shows how lessons from past hardships can pop up when you least expect it.
Totally. And all this intense early life, it feeds directly into his idea of the bad hand.
Right, the bad hand concept. His point isn't to deny it's tough, but you have to acknowledge it, right? Face it, but don't let it be your excuse forever. He even suggests journaling about it, using those hashtags, #badhand, #can'thurtme.
Exactly. It's about taking stock.
So for someone listening, maybe feeling they got a bad hand, what's the next step after just acknowledging it? How do you actually use it as fuel, like he did?
Well, acknowledging it is huge, like you said.
Yeah.
It stops it from just running you subconsciously. The journaling helps make it conscious.
Right.
But the next step, the Goggins step, is reframing. Instead of seeing it as why you can't do things, you start looking for what it taught you.
Okay.
The resilience it forced you to build, finding the strength in the struggle, It's like finding the raw metal that you can then forge into toughness.
Moving on then to part 2. His mother finds a new partner, Wilmoth Irving, who sounds like a complete contrast, brought stability, calmness.
Yeah, totally different vibe. They moved to Indianapolis, and Goggins actually went to Cathedral High for a bit. But interestingly, he admits he cheated to get in and keep his grades up.
Yeah, it's ironic given his later focus on brutal honesty. He made the basketball team there too, which was pretty competitive.
Right, but they couldn't afford the school long term, so he was only there a year. Shows potential, even amid some questionable choices.
Then he moved back to a more rural setting, and basketball is different. The Indianapolis trash talk style didn't fly.
No, not at all. He ended up getting sidelined, sort of shut down his motivation. It really shows how much environment matters, that cultural fit.
Definitely. And around this time, he did that pararescue jump orientation course, the PJOC. Heard that intense story about Scott Guerin's skydiving accident.
Yeah, that clearly stuck with him. A real wake-up call about the risks involved in certain paths, maybe planted a seed about that kind of commitment.
But academically, things were sliding downhill. Junior year, he's faking report cards, F's to B's, D's to C's, and his mom's reaction, or lack of it, is striking. She didn't even ask to see them.
It is striking. He gets kicked out eventually. The real wake-up call doesn't come until he gets that official letter, terrible grades, attendance, basically saying he might not graduate.
What do you think was going on with his mom there? Just overwhelmed, or maybe letting him hit bottom?
It's hard to say for sure. Maybe a bit of both. Overwhelmed by her own stuff, maybe sensing he needed to face the music himself. Sometimes stepping in too much prevents the lesson from landing, you know?
True. So that letter, that was the trigger. He describes that moment in front of the grungy bathroom mirror, finally seeing himself clearly.
Yeah, seeing this low-budget thug with no purpose and no future, that brutal, honest look at himself, that was the turning point. Time to get real, as he put it.
That raw self-assessment, however painful, seems key.
Absolutely. You can't change course until you really see where you are.
Okay, part 3. He finds purpose, initially just aiming for the Air Force, and it changes everything. He says that goal gave him so much mental energy that the hate and resentment he carried, especially towards the racists in Brazil, Indiana, just started to fade.
It's fascinating, right? How a positive goal can push out the negative. And his thinking about the racism evolved too. He started seeing it as their insecurity, not his problem. So he could kind of detach from it, refuse to let it define him, and instead, he consciously flipped it. Use every insult as like more fuel for the engine. That's classic Goggins reframing negativity into motivation, even back then.
Then he talks about that job as a pest exterminator, which sounded soul-crushing. He contrasts feeling totally numb doing that with how, weirdly motivated he was cleaning latrines in Air Force boot camp.
Yeah, he remembers the strict drill sergeant, the fear of getting recycled, and how it made him clean that toilet like his life depended on it.
It really drives home how important purpose is. Without it, even simple work feels empty. That numbness, that dissatisfaction, it was pushing him towards something else.
Definitely. It highlights that motivation isn't just about the task, it's the why behind it. Boot camp had a clear why. Exterminating didn't. That emptiness became a major push factor.
Which leads us right into part 4, the Navy SEAL dream. He felt half-baked, physically strong maybe, but mentally weak, no discipline. He even blew off the sickle cell trait briefing, which is kind of ironic later.
Yeah, and then boom, sees the BUDS training on TV.
That TV show moment, what was it about that?
It triggered something intense. Jealousy, seeing those guys suffer. He didn't recoil. He felt this pull. He wanted that level of test. Looks in the mirror again, sees the 300 pounds, no education, no discipline, dead-end job.
But this time it wasn't despair.
No, this time it was pure resolve. He saw what was possible, and he just decided, I want that, basically, no matter what.
But getting there, the recruiters basically laughed at him at first because of his weight. He had to be relentless.
Totally relentless, until he found Stephen Shaljo, that one recruiter who actually saw the drive underneath the surface. Shaljo was absolutely critical, helping him navigate the ASVAB test and everything.
Shows the power of just one person believing in you.
For sure. And the night of the ASVAB test itself, that disgusting incident at the restaurant he worked at, finding dead rats and roaches. Instead of just being grossed out, it became this immediate, visceral need to escape. It just poured gasoline on the fire of his determination.
Okay, part 5. The actual path to BUBS. Insanely tough. He starts trying to run 4 miles, makes it maybe 400 yards, feels like a total failure.
Right. But instead of quitting, what does he do? He watches Rocky, that round 14 scene.
Classic.
And it clicks. He decides right then to take that feeling of failure, all the negativity, and consciously use it as fuel. Turn it into power. That's such a core Goggins idea.
It really is. Not denying the bad feelings, but actively repurposing them.
Exactly. He didn't let that first run define him. He just kept at it, pushing the distance, ignoring the pain. And he passed the ASAT, even guessing on a bunch of questions. Another small win, keeping him going.
And then comes Hell Week. He talks about not just the insane physical pain, but the psychological warfare of it all.
Oh yeah. He mentions the initial sort of giddy energy at breakout, but how quickly it turns into just relentless, profound suffering for 130 straight hours.
Just unimaginable.
It's designed to break you, mentally and physically. And during that, he connects with Bill Freak Brown, another guy who'd overcome a ton just to be there. That shared struggle creates a bond.
And the big lesson from Hell Week, the one he keeps coming back to, is knowing your why.
Absolutely critical. You need a reason deeper than just, I want to be a SEAL, to get through that level of hell. Something personal, powerful. He also mentions that second wind idea.
Yeah, that feeling of being totally spent, but pushing through anyway and finding more. Have you ever felt that? Is it something you can, train?
That's interesting. I think lots of people have felt moments where they surprised themselves, found energy they didn't know they had. Goggins suggests it's often about pushing past your brain's first stop signals. Our minds try to protect us, right? They signal fatigue maybe before the body's truly done.
Makes sense.
So by consciously overriding those first warnings, pushing into the discomfort, sometimes you tap into those deeper reserves. It's like training your mind to tolerate more, redefining your limits.
And that mental game, that refusal to quit, it defines him. He finishes Hell Week top of his class, which is just insane, starting at nearly 300 pounds, barely able to run months before.
It's a mind-blowing transformation. Pure willpower. Even small things show the shift, like laughing when he fell off the rope bridge into freezing mud. Instead of being crushed, he finds humor.
That laughter is huge. It shows he's detached from the fear of failing, sees it differently now.
Yeah, maybe even as just part of the process.
He also talks about that underwater knot tying drill, panicking, feeling like he was drowning.
Right, and using the instructor, Psycho, who seemed to enjoy their suffering, as this weird motivation, turning that negativity into fuel again.
Which brings us to the calloused mind. How can someone listening apply that? You don't need to go through Hell Week to build mental calluses, right?
Exactly. It's not just about enduring hard stuff. It's about seeking it out and learning from it. Every time you push through a tough workout, finish a difficult project, handle a rough conversation, you're building tiny mental calluses. The key is to notice it. Acknowledge the discomfort you beat. Recognize the strength you build. Don't avoid hard things. See them as training opportunities. Start small. Maybe just step slightly out of your comfort zone each day, then increase it. Consistent exposure and deciding not to quit.
Got it. So, part 6, he faces a major physical hurdle. Diagnosed with a hole in his heart, an atrial septal defect, ASD. Dangerous for diving, a core SEAL skill.
And it's staggering to think he did everything before that diagnosis with this condition. Operating with a tank perpetually half full, he said.
The Navy suggests he scale back, understandably.
But does he? Of course not. He refuses limits, finds a doctor for surgery later, gets temporarily put in recruitment, which he hated, wanted to be back in the fight. Just shows that unwavering focus.
He gets back to a platoon, considers himself an introvert, but dives deep into tactics, weapons, strategy, becomes a perpetual student. Then there's that mountain phase training. The 4-night FTX in freezing conditions, minimal gear, minimal food. Sounds horrific.
Pushing human limits there. Surviving that takes incredible mental discipline. Breaking it down, hour by hour. Refusing to let the body screaming override the mission. His background obviously helped him push those boundaries.
Then Ranger School, the Florida phase. Jumping into freezing swamps. But what's really interesting here is his focus shifts. He starts helping the guys who are struggling.
Yeah, that's a huge development. He's not just about his own survival anymore. He's leading, supporting others. And it gets recognized. He's voted Enlisted Honor Man 100% peer evaluation. He calls it being uncommon among uncommon.
It shows real growth, from just surviving to actively lifting others up.
And that feeds into his starting at zero idea. Never get complacent. Always be willing to be a beginner again. Learn new things. Keep pushing.
That starting at zero mindset feels so important for just life. Not thinking you've made it, but always being ready for the next challenge, ready to learn.
Exactly. Growth is ongoing. Mastery here doesn't mean you stop learning there. Keep that curiosity. Embrace the discomfort of being new at something.
Okay, part 7 takes us into ultra endurance, ultra marathons, triathlons. He talks about the Ultraman race, especially that brutal swim swallowing seawater, vomiting, swimming way off course. Why? Why keep seeking out this extreme punishment?
Well, after becoming a SEAL, which seemed impossible, he needed new mountains, right? Ultras offered a different kind of test. Not just short bursts, but sustained pain management, endurance over days sometimes. It was about pushing those boundaries again, finding out what else he was capable of.
We also hear about Admiral Winters talking about needing diverse operators and spec ops, people who can blend in different cultures.
Right, showing how the needs of the military were evolving, recognizing different kinds of strength.
And we see Goggins' insane time management, cutting out all the bullshit, as he calls it, to make room for training. There's that land nav story too, where he's way behind, breaks protocol slightly to hit the checkpoint.
Shows that adaptability again, that laser focus on the objective, do what it takes.
Which brings us to the pull-up record attempt on the Today Show. That did not go well. No, it was kind of chaotic. There was drama with the Navy over the No Easy Day book release right before, the distractions of live TV, the equipment wasn't right. He says he just didn't respect the record enough going in.
Yeah, a very public lesson in humility and preparation. He realized success has to be earned every single time. No entitlement. And crucially, he owned it. Didn't blame anyone else. He also mentions hitting a physical wall after that attempt, and his mom being there for him.
Right. So finally, part 8, some reflections. He retires from the Navy, highly decorated. We hear Bill Freak Brown became a successful lawyer, showing the potential unlocked by overcoming adversity.
Amazing. Goggins also reconnects with his brother, Trunnis Jr., after years apart, suggesting personal healing and forgiveness. He gives shout-outs to Scott Guerin, whose story impacted him early on, and Victor Pena for his support. And now, of course, he's a public speaker.
Yeah, his story is just powerful. Retirement was the end of one chapter, but the start of sharing those lessons much more widely.
Absolutely. A testament to what people can endure and achieve.
So wrapping up this deep dive, what are the big takeaways? We saw how that incredibly rough childhood, paradoxically, maybe built some kind of foundation. The power of just brutal self-honesty, confronting yourself.
Yeah, and how finding purpose can completely redirect negative energy. The absolute need for mental toughness, that calloused mind to push through barriers.
And that starting at zero idea, never stop growing, always be learning.
Definitely. Goggins' whole journey. It's extreme, no doubt about it. But it offers these sometimes uncomfortable insights into resilience and just how far the human mind can actually go.
So a final thought for you listening, think about your own bad hand. Really look at it. Instead of letting it be an excuse, how could you start reframing it? Could those struggles actually be a source of strength you haven't tapped into yet? And maybe think about your cookies too, your past wins, big or small. Remember them. They're proof you've overcome things before, and you can draw on that when the next challenge hits. Thanks for joining us on The Deep Dive.